Hey, so over the past week and a half, I volunteered abroad for the first time. Here's an overview of how it went. I have organised a volunteer for stay trip with my lovely friend here, Renato. Look, a very lovely looking man, is he not? I think he's lovely too. We had a phone call 2 days ago, so I'll be there tomorrow. I bought my tickets 2 days ago. I accidentally bought the wrong ticket. Good stuff for me. So I had to buy another ticket, so that's £24 down the drain. My flight is at 8:35 tomorrow morning, and I haven't packed. As you can see, I was not the most prepared, but we got there in the end. The next day was a hard wake, but I was able to get on a Boris bike and head to London Bridge Station, with only slight hypothermia, before safely boarding the Gatwick train. I even got to catch up with an old friend you might remember. Upon landing, I had to take a bus from Turin's airport to its city centre in order to board a train to Pinerolo Olimpica. I missed the train. Once I ended up boarding the train, the trip was extremely relaxing, with exquisite views of the Italian mountainside and the quiet humming of intercity rails putting me to sleep. Before I knew it, I had arrived, and I was ready to meet Renato, when I got this ominous message. It turned out that Renato had crashed only a few hundred metres from picking me up. After a rushed greeting, Renato, clearly taken aback by the accident, showed me what had happened. The damage caused to his Citroën was substantial, and my first impression of the area was the local mechanic, who later dropped us home. The rest of the afternoon was a bit more relaxed, as I settled into my new place. I had a go at riding a few bikes which Renato had lying around. The first one had been pretty badly damaged by the Brazilians which had stayed before me. The second one was a lot better. The only issue was that it didn't have functioning brakes. After putting both bikes back into the garage, I treated myself to some well-deserved dinner. And after a small set of complaints, didn't have a lot to eat, so it's going to take a while to get used to this. Just freezing a bit. The heaters don't work here, which is great. I was ready for bed. I will see you in the morning. But not before I showed my immaculate planning skills. You gotta eat your Look at that. The next day, I began exploring and helping on the farm. The terrain was quite hilly, but Renato had made the most out of it, with almost 100 olive trees and an abundance of miscellaneous fruits and vegetables, as well as a few chickens. My first day of work involved chopping down and debranching mimosa trees. There you go. So pretty much the main reason he wants to cut these trees are to protect the olives. And in fact, the reason why they're so bent is one, because of the wind, but also because of the snow. So it pulls it down. So he's instructed me to only leave the strong ones. But yeah, it's just such a nice day. Anyway, that's I then carried these twigs back to the house for drying. This process of de-leaving, cutting, breaking, carrying, dropping, and coming back up again, repeated over for the rest of the day. The following day was much of the same. However, this time, as well as the mimosas which I cut, I was tasked with collecting and chopping trees and branches that had fallen from last winter, in preparation for the next. I ended up making pretty quick progress. Now it's time to cut these big logs into small ones for the fire, leave these ones here. Yeah, it's been a pretty good morning. Okay, so I need to get this big log down to the house, and the path kind of connects there. After this pathetic attempt, I got back to doing some real work. clearing the path of any leaves to reduce the risk of Renato falling. It ended up being a pretty productive day, and I capped it off by cutting the remaining branches which I'd collected. The 31st marked the beginning of Renato's pruning of his olive trees. My task involved collecting the cut branches, de-leaving them, and breaking them into smaller twigs. Pretty good day at the office. We've now got some afternoon sunlight, which is lovely. I mean, look at the view. This continued onwards to April Fools, although now with a change of shirt. Here I show my understanding of the pruning process. So an olive tree like this, which he hasn't pruned, the inside is like really chaotic, as you can see. When it comes to harvesting time, it makes it really difficult. It grows too big, so he can't reach the olives. So he's actually strategically reducing the size of the olive tree. So more sunlight comes in, more olives grow, but they also grow at a lower height. I would help, but I don't know where to cut, and I feel like I'd ruin the trees. After lunch, Renato showed me a new property he had recently acquired. He explained his dreams for rebuilding it, but upon inspection, it had some obvious obstacles and flaws. So Renato has bought this property. The main problem with the property though is this back bit here actually, this area here. So the house was just built on top of this stone and it had soil up to here apparently. So they need to build a protection from this. Not a good investment in my eyes. Don't judge a man by his investment. It did have a stunning view though. The sheer number of olive trees meant that the next few days were quite similar to the first, removing the leaves and collecting large branches. Progress was slow, but satisfying. This is an example of what I've been doing over the past few days. So pretty much leaves and small branches go here, which then get transported into here, which then gets moved all the way to the end there, where he plans on spreading it out across the soil. And in that way, he hopes to eradicate any occurrence of weeds. On the 4th, I woke up to itchiness in my eye, which I disregarded until I looked myself in the mirror. Following Renato's concerns, we headed to the Francesco chemist after lunch and bought some eye wash. The rest of the day was quite relaxed, slowly continuing with the debranching, whilst practicing mindfulness. Later that evening, I started the fire for the first time, as temperatures began to drop, and I started doing some university work. Fortunately, the next day the swelling around my eye had reduced. It turns out it was allergic, but if you can see actually, there's 2 scratches there, and that was from a branch similar to one of these when I was trying to break it, flung up into my eye. I fortunately closed it, otherwise it would have been One-Eye Joe. But not Joe and Rudy. Anyway, I can't believe it's been over a week. I feel like I'm really getting into a routine now where it feels like home. Humans adapt quickly. Anyway, get back to it. My task for the day was back to day 1, cutting down mimosa trees and removing their leaves. I promptly rewarded myself with some wine that afternoon. The 6th marked my final day of help, and it began quickly, with Renato looking to remove a tree which had fallen into his creek.
They have not yet called the police.
After a successful operation, I was tasked with removing the soil it had dragged in. Shoveling, not the best task in the world. But there was a slight issue. One potential complication is that these holes here are beehives. Fortunately, Renato agreed that it was too dangerous, and we called off the operation. For the rest of the day, I helped a bit around the house, before walking around the farm and reviewing the work I had done. So over my time, I've added all these, also that pile there, and then we've also added these leaves here, and I'll go up and show you what else I've done. We got, this is just a part of the leaves I've done, and we go up here. All the branches from here have been taken down here, more of these leaves. A lot of, so you can see all of this here. This was all my doing. Do you need some help starting? Okay. Anyway, we've now got Renato in the back doing the grass cutting. Yeah, that's pretty much my time on the farm. It's been a great experience. Would I like to be on a farm? Maybe not at this age. Maybe knowledge work is more suited to me at this point in my career. Anyway, I'm just waffling. That evening, Renato and I drove around the neighbouring village of Roletto, where he showed me the old border between France and Italy. And then, did they push it back or something? Before we grabbed a few pizzas for us to share. On the way to get some pizza. Over dinner, we enjoyed a few beers whilst reminiscing on our last week and a half together, and the differing futures that lie ahead of us, acknowledging the new friendship that we had fostered. Early the next morning, Renato drove me to the train station, and after a quick goodbye, we were on our way to another adventure. Thank you again for your kind, open, cheeky spirit, Renato. All the best going forward.